Okay, I think we'll get started. Thank you everyone for coming. My name is Laura Rickard and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Communication and Journalism here at UMaine. It's my pleasure today to introduce our speaker, Billy Helprin. Billy has been the director of the Somes-Meynell Wildlife Sanctuary on Mount Desert Island since 2015. At the sanctuary, he coordinates multiple wildlife research and monitoring projects. He provides professional development for teachers and learning experiences for students, and they range in age, as we were just talking about. And he manages the lands and the waters that comprise the sanctuary. And I expect that Billy's going to tell us a lot more about this today, so I won't even try to explain some of the really cool and diverse projects he does. But I'll tell you a little bit about how I know him personally. I had the good fortune of meeting Billy back in 2016 when my colleague Kim Huguenard, right over there, who's in civil and environmental engineering, we contacted him. Someone gave us the heads up. I think it maybe was Bridie McGreevy. And we were looking for someone to help us out. We had just been awarded an NSF grant, and we knew that we wanted to measure storm surge levels in Bass Harbor and Southwest Harbor, and we knew we wanted to do it with citizen scientists, but we really had no idea how to do that beyond that. So we got in touch with Billy, and he proved to be an eager partner, an invaluable resource. He took time out of his busy schedule to drive us around all of Bass Harbor and Southwest Harbor and tell us this site looks good, this one maybe not so much, and tell us all the natural and cultural history in between. And also to serve as one of our citizen scientists. And beyond that, he allowed us to host project events at the sanctuary. Quite literally, we would not have been able to do our project without him, so thank you, Billy. Prior to working for the sanctuary, he was a Maine Coast Heritage Trust MDI regional steward, where he managed preserves, monitored conservation easements, worked with area partners and volunteers, did trail work, community garden work, invasive plant work, and even research projects. So again, quite a spectrum of projects. And then prior to Maine, Billy studied bison and elk on the National Elk Refuge in Wyoming, desert bighorn sheep in southeastern Utah, and large mammal ecology in Kenya. He also taught science for Canton City Schools in Ohio and field science classes at the Teton Science School and Great Plains Wildlife Institute. He brings to us a bachelor's degree in environmental science and biology from St. Lawrence University, a master's degree in wildlife biology from Utah State, and a Master of Arts in Teaching from Kent State University. So quite a background. I'm really looking forward to hearing about what you've been up to, so please join me in welcoming Billy Helprin.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Laura, and thanks everyone for coming out today. It's my pleasure to be here and tell you a little bit about what the Somes-Meynell Wildlife Sanctuary does. And I'm curious if anyone besides these folks right here have ever heard of the Somes-Meynell Wildlife Sanctuary. How did you guys hear about? Yeah.
I heard about it through Roberta Hill. She works in the Lake Stewards of Maine, and yeah, through her.
Okay, she's a great partner at Lake Stewards of Maine. Very good. Yeah, so I'm going to talk to you about a lot of the different projects the sanctuary works on and try to tie it into the sustainability work that the Mitchell Center is engaged with. And we'll start off here with how it got started. Virginia Somes Sanderson, who is descendant from Abraham Somes, who established the first European village on Mount Desert Island in 1761. So she's a descendant of his. And she grew up in Somesville and had a little camp on Somes Pond, which is a 104-acre small lake in the middle of the island, not far from Somesville. And she set up this wildlife sanctuary in 1985 with a bunch of board members. And there was a small endowment that went with the operation as well. And for the first quite a few years, they were just run by volunteers and board members. And eventually a director was acquired, and that person, David Lamont, was there for 15 years. And then I came in 2015 and transitioned from Maine Coast Heritage Trust as the land steward to become the director of the wildlife sanctuary. So this is the mission, basically, conservation and education in the Somes Pond and Long Pond watershed, which is the largest watershed on Mount Desert Island. And we'll zoom in on some maps here in a little bit. But basically focused on habitats and protecting wildlife and education for residents, students of all different ages with a variety of different programs. And this is in the bylaws, this whole arrangement for the what the sanctuary would be focused on. And starting right out, it mentions a lot of collaboration, cooperation with other organizations for conservation of that watershed in particular. So most of you probably haven't heard of this book, but some of you may have. The Little Engine That Could. I actually played The Little Engine That Could in a kindergarten play when I was like 5 or something. And I remember saying that this is about a whole bunch of toys trying to make it to a mountain village on the other side of a pass, and their engine quits, and they finally find this little switch engine that was just meant for moving trains around in a yard. And they, so this engine decides that she'll try to hook on and take them over the pass, and on the way up keeps saying, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. And that's what I think of myself at the sanctuary, just being the only year-round employee as the director, but certainly with help in all different forms. There's a summer field assistant usually from June through August. This year I'm going to have someone who's going to be there from mid-spring until into the fall, which will be a big help. And there's a board of directors of 14 people right now, most of whom are immediate residents right on MDI. There's a couple people that migrate back and forth, but they're quite engaged and helpful. It's a small annual budget, but we had to tie in with lots of other groups of all different types to help make things happen, which most organizations do, but this one in particular does. So I know these are some of the themes of the work that goes on here. Then I'll be talking about some of these things throughout with the different projects that we have. Knowledge co-production, that was a different term. I'm more used to thinking of like adaptive management for that, where you have basic science feeding back into how things are managed. And we do study loons and alewife and other research projects, but we directly kind of apply that right back in the system, not so much focused on publishing papers, but that's a possibility. And we work with a lot of others who are working on those things. And a big emphasis is on boundary spanning and not just staying in our one area. And that's enabled us to reach far beyond the watershed of Somes Pond and Long Pond. So here's the focus, to connect knowledge with action to strengthen economic, social, and environmental futures. And of course, we need to do this in order to be able to do that. And like I just mentioned, collaboration is at the foundation of everything that we do. So this might not be a typical analogy for a lot of you, but can you see any issues with these wall shingles as far as protecting against the elements? Has anyone done some shingling here, either on the roof or on a wall? Tell me what you see.
The seams are kind of too close together. It's going to allow water to get into the wall.
So if you zoom in, right here, this line right there. So I bought this house a few years ago, and when I saw that, I knew like, oh, I'm going to have to deal with that at some point here. But yeah, there should be more staggering back and forth. So the top layer, this one should cover that one and cover that one as well. But if you've got them all lined up together, you're going to have a gap and a vulnerability in protecting from the elements. And so I'm thinking of resiliency in the form of different organizations of different types working together to achieve various goals. And so here's an older bunch of shingles. They would probably fine when they went on, but sometimes you have things that happen, like they crack or fall off in places. And things change in organizations too. So having kind of intertwined connections with a lot of different groups and people helping each other accomplish the either education or ecological management goals is a big benefit. So want to respond to the elements or whatever the challenges you're facing as a system, whether it's a roof system or it could be feathers overlapping, working together to protect the bird or allow it to fly. What happens when you have a storm and you got something that blows off the top, what's underneath that to provide protection and enable the project, whatever it happens to be, to carry on. So a not so great shot of a molting raven, but just the idea of working together. You know, some of the things that have happened recently that have been like shingles blowing off could be like the government shutdown that has happened a couple times in the past few years, where I work a lot with Acadia National Park in all different sections, from education, interpretation, biological, invasive plants, and they were dead in the water for quite a while. And so some of the other groups that are involved in some of these projects can carry the ball while they're sidelined. And so you could also have a retirement of key personnel at some organization or agency, and that can be like creating a hole in your wing structure for efficient flight. So it helps to have the cultural knowledge of other people who've been working on those projects together, not just one massive agency, which can have some issues as well. And so I think of this as a model better than this, where you've got interwoven strands, creating a stronger connection, or trying to get whatever functions of your project done, rather than just a single strand wire or rope or something. So just for getting oriented here, so we're up right about there. If you walked out the door and took a bearing of about 157 degrees and went about 40.5 miles, you'd end up at Somes Pond, which is down here. So this is Mount Desert Island, Penobscot Bay. And while I was looking at this on Google Earth, I thought just played around with things a little bit and changed the perspective a little bit. And when you look at where we are from this perspective, it seems very strange to me. It probably does to you. I don't know if you can find exactly where we are immediately by looking at it from that way, looking from north to south. And another thing was how putting Maine, which is in here, in the middle of the map, instead of looking, usually when you see the map of the North American continent, Maine is way over here. You probably can think about when the map's being shown on a weather channel forecast, and they're doing this for the rest of the continent, and Maine is usually blocked by the person who's telling you stuff. You can't see anything about Maine, but when you put it, when it's center weighted here, what jumped out at me was how much ocean is around where we are, which you don't get that feeling when we look at the map the usual way. So there's with our boundaries on here, which makes things a lot easier. And so this reminded me too about organizational boundaries and government boundaries and what's important for government and getting things done. But they also, sometimes those boundaries are barriers to working on things together. And so from a small organization's point of view, through connections and relationships, I kind of span those boundaries easily on MDI because I've been there a while and involved with lots of different types of projects. This is even, when you zoom out a little bit more, it looks even funnier. So here's MDI, about 19 miles long, 14 wide, connected by a bridge here coming from Trenton. There's the Trenton or Bar Harbor Airport. And glacially carved lakes and Somes Sound. Arguments whether it's a fjord or a fjord, but all carved the same way by glaciers, open to the ocean down here. And so big differences sometimes for weather and wildlife and forest types from the center of the island to the edges around the water, surrounded by cold ocean water, makes quite a difference. So zooming in a little bit more, this is Somes Sound. This is Long Pond, which is the biggest lake on the island. It's about 900 acres. And then it flows through the outlet here, past Ripples Pond, and more wetland sometimes, to Somes Pond. And then there's a little mill pond. We'll zoom in, and this is Somesville. So that's the first town that was established on the island in 1761. So given that, do you know how many people that we have come visit, mostly in the summer time on the island? Who knows what the visitation numbers are? Anyone heard? Ballpark? 3 million? In the ballpark. It's been about 3.5 to 3.7 or so the past few years, and most of that's coming in, mid-June to early September or so. And lots of people come, and but there are places on the island where you can go to get away from things, and so having this little development is a little bit surprising on such a well-known island that's been visited for well over 100 years. People getting out of the heat of the summer of Philadelphia or New York City or further south to come and enjoy what Maine has to offer, and but this is quite well protected. I mentioned first settlement on Mount Desert Island. Abraham Somes he came from Gloucester, Mass. with his family and a small sailing vessel, and he created a mill pond and a sawmill, which started the development ability on the island for European people to make traditional houses. And then in the early 1790s, there was a woolen mill and a grist mill. So Somesville became the economic hub of the island. There were Native Americans there that would come to fish and harvest in the summer primarily, and mostly would go back onto the mainland in the wintertime. So this is Somes Pond. It gets water from Long Pond coming in this way, and from wetlands to the north. And here's Somesville, and that's the mill pond right there. And this is a trail map showing some of the ownership of the sanctuary. So the western flank and the southern part are part of the sanctuary, and there's trails around there. There's lots of wetlands. The land over on this side is protected by conservation easements on private properties. And along on this whole side, there's a conservation easement on property up there on that hill. And we're actually trying to acquire a 26.5 acre parcel up here that, even though it has a conservation easement on it, it allows for 3 house rights and a substantial road to get up there. There's some nice vernal pools up here and wetlands at the bottom of the hill. So we'd rather not have that happen. So we're working on that over the next year to raise the funds for that. So here's an aerial perspective from the kind of northwest. Here's Somes Pond. There's a small little privately owned island in it. The sanctuary headquarters building is over here. And that's Long Pond that flows through to come over in here. That's Somes Sound that empties out by Southwest Harbor. And then it flows out towards Somes Sound that way. But you see a largely intact forested block, and that's something that we want to try and protect with further sanctuary acquisition. So I'm going to show you a number of different projects that we work on, and I've kind of frame them as systems, and it's more like an organizational system about who's involved in different ways. And these are some of the functions that we do around the alewife migration. We are always maintaining the fish passageways, and that's a big job throughout the year. We actually count everyone that comes in at the mill pond, and we also count at Long Pond, 1.5 miles inland. We get samples from them, scale samples, and I'll show you some pictures here. And we bring lots of students there from around the state and some more locally. So a lot of different people are important for this. Lots of volunteers are involved with this project. Streamside residents are important to get permission to be able to access stream sections right in Somesville and other places. There's kind of permitting things. We have special permits from DMR and IF&W to handle the fish and count them and gather data and submit that. And then we do some collaborative education programs with MDI Historical Society and Acadia National Park. And College Atlantic, one of their fisheries professors, Chris Peterson's on our board, and he helps a lot with the alewife project. And we get information from, there's a former harvester. This was a run that was harvested back in up until the early 80s or so. So probably most of you know what alewife are, species of river herring that about 10 to 12 inches long, forked tails, big eyes, and so they come in and always have until humans started putting dams on all of our streams up and down the New England coast. And so that became an issue right off the bat early on when Abraham Somes built that dam. They used to be netted over to get them upstream, but fish passage was not an easy thing. So this is the mill pond site, and the sawmill sat right over here. This is Somes Harbor out here, Sargent Mountain up here. This kind of wide angle view makes it look big, but it's not a very big pond. So this is the Somesville Library, and here's the outflow dam right there, and the fish ladder top chamber is right here. So lots of water pours off of here certain times of the year, and not so much the past few summers when it's been very dry. But this, I'm standing on the fish ladder structure here. It's a beautiful location. It's one of the most heavily photographed spots on the island, and actually in Maine. So here's the fish ladder structure. It's one switchback. It has wooden slats in it. It's a denial system, so there's a V in the notch in the boards, and that gives the fish a little bit of ability to get some slower water and make their way up. They're incredibly strong swimmers, and in the spring when things are really moving from snow melt and spring rains, it's amazing that they can get up here. And these shots, this is at low tide, and that makes quite a difference. So all this is mostly dewatered. It's just more like freshwater stream. So there's the next dam up, the second dam, was reworked in 2005, 2006, and it's made of small blocks. And so this is Chris Peterson and Bruce Connery, who was the park biologist until he retired in December. But looking at appreciating all the blackfly larvae that are attached to the rocks that had been in the stream here. But we had to do lots of work on this one to fix it up occasionally, and we're going to have to do some more major renovations pretty soon. And so each year, usually around Earth Day, we go out and we try to direct the fish to the right side of the stream where the fish ladder is and away from this dam here. If they get up this side, then they just follow the strongest flow, and that's how they figure out that that's the way upstream and to the lakes which they want to spawn in. But if this is the strongest one, they'll just go there and they'll just stay up here trying to go up, 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 and use up all their energy and get picked off by predators. So we try and direct them off to the right here in this section. And so it's a steep rise, it's a big climb, so it zigzags back and forth to get a shallow step so they can stay in the water column. They can't jump out of the water like salmonas can. They've got to stay in the water and move their way up. This is David Lamont, who's now the Fields Pond Nature Center Director for Maine Audubon, and he was my predecessor as a director at the sanctuary. He coordinated studies back in early 2000s, engineering studies and then construction work, to fix up these fish ladders, which made a big difference. This is the outlet of Somes Pond, where there was a woolen mill, and this is the ladder that they go up here. So an older structure, but it's holding together pretty well and not that big of a drop. But we still had to do work on it in the springtime to block off the side passages so they go up the middle here and get to Somes Pond. And most of the fish get there to spawn in Somes Pond. This is the top of the chamber in Somesville, and this is about 7 by 8 by 9. It can hold thousands of fish sometimes. This is a door that gets lifted up, and we actually count when the fish come out here with a hand clicker. And James, who was a volunteer, who worked for the park during the day as an interpreter, just has a hand clicker, and we can count them as they come through. And we'll count them like 3 times a day when they're really running hard in the spring. We have students that count also throughout the year. This is the outlet of Long Pond, and at high water here, and we want them to go to the right here where the ladder is, not into this dead end here. So we try and create a little buffer right there, which you can see at lower water. And we've got a great volunteer, J.F. Burns, who lives nearby, and here we have to hand net them out of this to count them, and that's a big job when you've got sometimes hundreds in there, and he does a tremendous job with that. So we take scale samples sometimes, and so here's one that we've captured, and show you a picture of that in a second here. So back in 2005, there was a total of 361 fish that came in. That's it at the mill pond, 361. And then that rehab was done on the fish ladders, and numbers started coming up. And so it's been mostly up, some little bits of down, but we've been up close to 40,000 the past couple of years. So it's always interesting the next year to see what's going to happen for the next year's run. They come in as usually 3 or 4 year olds, and we take scale samples to get an idea of how old they are. We'll talk about that in a sec. This is the long pond run, so a portion of them, usually 10 to 20%, sometimes more, sometimes as much as 60%. One year, 2016, went to long pond, which was unusual. This is comparing the mill pond in blue with long pond in green or red here. And you can see it's heavily weighted to the beginning of the run, and it tapers off into later June. So this is we take like 5 scales from the back area, different spots, to get an idea of the rings on there. It tells us how old they are, and if they've been scuffed up under a microscope, that tells us they've been in here into spawn before, because those rings have been braided against rocks. That means they've been in streams, not out in the ocean. And the scales samples that we send to DMR have been telling us that it's not a very mature population. There's mostly 3 and 4 year olds, not many 5, 6, 7, or 8s. And the bigger they are, the bigger the females would be, the more eggs they could carry. So we'd like to have some more of the older ones. But that hasn't been happening right now. We're not sure what's going on with overwinter survival in the ocean, or not as many making it out because of low water. So we're still working on that. There's lots of predators that come around when the alewife are running. It's a wildlife spectacle. If you have a chance to get down there from mid-May to early June on a weekend or something, can be 5 or 6 osprey flying around at once, eagles waiting to chase them, usually to steal their fish, mink, otter sometimes, seals, mergansers, cormorants, foxes, all kinds of things come in because of the alewife run. And this, of course, happens all up and down the coast. Lots of gulls, probably the number 1 predator. Here's a blackback gull. You can see how big that is. That's probably about 12 inches or so. And, of course, there's no chewing with these guys. There's no plucking apart like an eagle or something. It's amazing what even a herring gull can do. So you can see what's going on in here. So that's probably from there to there, filled up. So we had different groups come. Acadia National Park and the sanctuary team up to do something called the Great Fish Migration. It's advertised to the park, and schools sign up from around the state to do things with the park in the springtime, and a lot of them have come and done this. And so we've had 250 to 300 students in the past couple of years come to do that. This is the first project the Park Service has done outside of the national park. Somesville is not within the Park Service grounds, so it's an example of working together a little bit differently, and it doesn't have to be on your own ground, so to speak. So they get a great chance to see what's going on and help count and help sample. We also have Tim Garrity, who's the president of the MDI Historical Society, who talks to the students about Somesville's creation and why that was the first European settlement there, because of the confirmation of the sound and the deep water and granite harvesting that used to happen there to provide building material in New York and Philadelphia and DC. So we work together on this. So big groups. So switching to aquatic invasive species, we do a number of functions here with prevention, early detection, education, and it's a little bit blurry here. Does that look blurry to you guys?
Rapid response.
And rapid response, yes. And so for prevention, we're working on a courtesy boat inspection station at Long Pond, which is the biggest lake, the most likely to have boats from away come, which would be more likely to have infested water bodies. And so we do that, and that's in conjunction with the Department of Environmental Protection and Lakes Environmental Association. We have some great volunteers that help staff do that. And then this is the key to get boaters checking their own equipment fishing gear to make sure they're not bringing anything into the lake there. Early detection efforts focus on invasive plant patrol and training local people with massive help from the Lake Stewards of Maine and Roberta Hill that some of you might know. And we've had lots of volunteers come from away. They call them the Uber Ippers, Uber invasive plant patrollers. And so they're really experienced in lakes in western and southern Maine. And we've had a great time with them coming the past 3 years. And we've surveyed every lake on the island now. And so we have a baseline of information that there are no aquatic invaders that have been detected yet. So, and that's in conjunction with the park as well. I should say, we're going to be working on doing more in Hancock County to help check lakes that are there that don't get as much attention because they're more remote and there's not as much in terms of a volunteer base there. So some of our getting more trained people can go and help with that. And then this emergency response is if we get a report of something, Eurasian water milfoil or Brazilian LD or something, I've got a boat that we can take and then go with the coordinators from Hancock County to check that out quickly, even if the conditions aren't great for canoe or kayaks and things. So we're going to be working on developing that more this spring and summer. So we want to maintain this nice clear water that we have on the lakes of MDI. It's a big part of why people come to the coast of Maine and Acadia National Park and MDI. So this is a training session for invasive plant patrollers. And that's Roberta there on the deck of the sanctuary looking over part of Somes Pond. So we go out and just practice and collect specimens. And young kids can come out too with their parents. And this is a bucket scope, so he's not throwing up. He's actually looking into, it's like looking at a glass bottom boat. It's got a plexiglass piece that you can see into the water and break surface tension. And then come back and start sorting out and working on identification. And that's, of course, a lifelong thing to work on. And then doing actual surveys. This is out on Eagle Lake, a little bit rougher day. But we've got a lot done the past few years with that. It takes a lot of coordination. This is on Echo Lake with Park Service folks and some of the folks from away and some locals. So this is the courtesy boat inspection station on Long Pond. And we've got all kinds of signs and things, but we just asked them to stop for a minute and check their equipment with us. And most people are very compliant. And in fact, there's only been one person, I think, and it was actually a resident of the lake, which is strange, who wasn't totally all for doing this because people from away especially know how bad it can be on their home lake. A lot of lakes, and maybe some of the places where you guys are from, where lakes have to be mowed to create a path to get through all the invasive plants that have come in. So that means that you're not going to be doing much swimming or fishing. Loons can't fish there because they're not going to be able to see or swim underwater to chase fish. So land values go down. If you've got an infested water body, that affects the tax base. So all those things are interlinked. We want to try to do the best we can to keep that from happening here. And this is a kind of a crazy spot in the summertime. There's a canoe and kayak rental place, and now they're doing paddle boards, and then you get the boat ramp. So we oftentimes are helping get the non-motorized people over there. But this is the scene sometimes in the summer, looking down the lake. So this is one of the western mountains. That's inside the national park. This is private land on this side. But it can get pretty crazy out there. And there's a pair of loons that has a territory there. Here's one of them right here at the north end of the lake, and they are remarkably tolerant. It's a wide range of what they're able to handle. And so we know this is working in part because people know who to call if they see something that there's a question about. They don't have to be a great aquatic botanist. They just have to know something's a little bit different, so just know what's normal, and then be able to alert someone, like call the sanctuary. I can come out and look at it and determine that it's a native plant and don't have to worry about that. So this is what we're working on into the future here. So loons that's a project that the sanctuary's had since 2001 or 2, and we do research and monitoring with them, protection of their nesting areas and the birds themselves, and lots of education. I've got there's an MDI loon observation group that has about 140 people now. Most of them are residents, but some are away or they might migrate away. But we share observations, photos, questions, and I post, or the sanctuary assistant posts once a week at least, about something that's going on. And so people love to stay abreast of what's happening and contribute. And that's been a really fun thing to be involved with. And it's enabled us to figure out more what's going on because we have so many people with their eyes on different territories, because we can't get to all the different lakes. There's 12 territories, and they're not all super easy to get to. So that's been a big help. And then we started a new interpretive program called the MDI Loon Watch, a collaboration between the sanctuary and park education and interpretive staff at Echo Lake Beach, which I'll show you in a second here. And we work with Acadia Wildlife Foundation if there's an injured bird, Avian Haven if there's something more serious that they can't handle. And then we put our data onto Anecdata, which is a program from MDI Biolab. So there's a page for us to do that. And then we do the Maine Audubon survey the third Saturday in July. And I just came back from the Northeast Loon Study Working Group. So that's people from all around the Northeast who are doing research on loons to get more connected to what's going on here and around the country. And we have help from Loon Conservation Associates in southern Maine. AMC camp on Echo Lake's been really helpful because of some nest sites that are close by to them. And then lots with Acadia National Park, and Friends of Acadia provides some funding for some of our efforts. So this is what we go out to see. Starting pretty soon when the ice goes out here, the males will be coming back and setting up their territories, establishing them. Others will be trying to fight to get one. There's as many lakes as you saw on those satellite maps. There's not that many good nest sites. They need to be right next to the water's edge and be able to swim away. So this is down at the south end of Echo Lake, and this is taken in mid-August, or maybe even late August. This was a nest site that was started like June 24th that year. There's a stream that comes out here, and our summer pattern has been to not have much water at all after a wetter spring. So they started building here, but soon that became too high and dry. Because their feet are so far back on their bodies, they can't walk on land very well at all. I'll show you a picture of that in a second. So here's a bird on the latest nest here, and it's still quite close to lots of land. And last year, when this was taken, there was lots of problems with, I'll show you. So here's on that nest, but lots of vegetation around. They usually are going to have 2 eggs, and they hatch within usually a day of each other. Incubation about 28 days, but it'd be a big prize for someone like that to find. So they've been harassed by mink, and that's easier if there's lots of land around them. So last spring I made a nest raft, and these are deployed in a lot of different places, particularly where there's big fluctuations of water levels on like hydropower dams. And they have certain regulations about how low or how high they can go. But sometimes they'll use rafts to help mitigate the impact on loon nesting sites. And so we put this out, and the loons went right to it last year. In fact, when we went back, it got blown to the south because of some, we didn't have strong enough anchors to the north. We went back to put that in place, and the loons were actually, one of them was sitting on the raft on the nest while we were trying to move it back to the north, pulling it with a canoe. So this pair is very tolerant, and this has so many people in the summertime. So we try to use signing and rope lines and things to mark them off. But this is what it can look like in the summertime at Echo Lake Beach. This is very typical, and the nest raft is right there. And the Echo Lake AMC camp is right here, so that's a busy spot. But there's all kinds of swimmers, and but the birds are right there. And so our interpretive station for the MDI Loon Watch, we had a table with different books and skeletons and other things, and skulls and spotting scopes that kids and adults could use, and binoculars to be able to watch from a distance. And we had over 2,400 people come over and deal directly with us and talk about things. And so over 100 hours of several people being there kind of on duty while the nest was going. So that worked really well. We'll do that again this year. It's a great way to reach a lot of people. A lot of people don't know. They think, is that a robot? Is that like a real thing out there? Because it just sits there. And like it turns its head like, they think it's like remote control. So they just don't know anything about loons. But it's a good opportunity to talk about them and about viewing wildlife appropriately and with little disturbance. So here, as this adult is manipulating the eggs, rolling them over, the legs are way on the back of the body, not under here, like a mallard or black duck or something. So they are not good at moving around on land. Here's a chick that just hatched. There's another one underneath the females on here. This happens to be the male. Both male and female will incubate. So that was on their first day on the water, and sometimes they'll be on the parent's back. And we follow them through the season, and hopefully they make it to fledge sometime in September, October, or maybe even later. So the education system has lots of different pieces here. You can just read. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we do a lot of different kinds of programs. And this is a quotation from a book that is a really great one. Scott Sampson's How to Raise a Wild Child. And I think it's a really important book, but and talks about the connection of young people, even younger than a lot of you, to wild places. And the importance of that is gigantic and oftentimes overlooked. So one of the favorite parts of my job is getting kids outside and doing different things, whether it's going for a hike along the trails of Somes Pond and seeing who's out on the water. Different activities. This just happened to be some compass practice with some middle school students late winter one year. We'd get involved in different research projects with students. This is red pine scale monitoring on Norumbega Mountain, which is in their home watershed. We're trying to develop outdoor classroom places for schools where they don't have to come into the park necessarily. They don't have to come to the sanctuary. They can go out in their home watershed, hike to the place, or just an easy walk, and do things that are meaningful in their own backyards. So we have Jesse Wheeler, who's involved with the exotic plant management team. He's the manager of that. And red pine scale is a sucking insect that came from Japan. And it's the only place we know of it in the state of Maine is on MDI. But it's killing all the red pines, along with some other fungal shoot tip blights. But the students are involved in monitoring what's happening as these stands decay, what's going to happen next, what kind of trees and plants are going to come in. Another program we do was a resurrection of something called a floating classroom, which was started by a good friend of mine, Tom Lawrence. And if you've ever bought water monitoring equipment, he had a company called Water Monitoring Equipment and makes all kinds of viewing scopes and tools for doing limnology studies. But we got this going again at the sanctuary 2 years ago. And usually 8th graders come out the canoes are clamped together, and they come out to a raft in the deepest part of the lake and do water quality sampling every meter of the lake. They do temperature, dissolved oxygen titrations. They start out on the water and then finish the titrations back on land. And then we get our values, and we can plot those and look at correlations between water depth and temperature, look at density layers and barriers. And it's a good science overview for teachers, for their students for the rest of the year. And they have great experience out there. A Secchi disc reading for water clarity, plankton net tows, and sometimes some chance to explore around the lake a little bit more too. Lots of equipment goes into it, so that stuff all lives at the sanctuary. The school district bought the equipment, and then we got park folks that are helping run this with me also. So it's a real collaborative effort. Do other things with schools too, sometimes going into class. I worked with 3rd and 4th grade students and teachers at it's Tremont, Trenton, and Pematic a couple of years ago. We did a little tree unit and looking at from building materials to things outdoors, and just getting them out and exploring and learning to identify and see what's out there, including invasive species like Eurasian bittersweet. so that they start developing those search images and know more about what's in their own neighborhoods. They went home and looked at what was actually wood inside their homes or what was in their yards, different species. So they really got into it. And they also, the art teacher has been great there at Pematic, and he got them involved with different artistic renditions of leaves. This is kind of like stained glass stuff they did. And then working with Tremont School in the wintertime when we had enough snow to dig snow pits and analyze snow layers and talk about the physics of snow. The kids that are out doing a variety of things. This is obviously with the alewife. And just to be able to feel one of the alewife is a big event for them. So there's other collaborative efforts that we do, including the Acadia Birding Festival, doing an invasive species forum May 4th down in Northeast Harbor, at the neighborhood house. And so these are some of the benefits of economic, social, ecological. There's a variety. You can come up with more of them for sure. And there's some of these things, there's costs and benefits to dealing with whatever the topic is. The Sensing Storm Surge project from these guys here, and they have lots of implications for costs and benefits. Also involved with a mosquito surveillance study with the Maine Medical Center, looking at disease prevalence, if there's West Nile virus or Eastern equine encephalitis, or new species that might be arriving, either on their own or with cruise ships that come from all over the place. Bar Harbor has like 180 that usually come in from spring through fall. Here's our storm surge sensor material. That's what's missing recently here. So this is at the end of a pier. This is Bass Harbor, some of the western mountains. So this is going each month to download data and help these guys collect information about how tidal waters and storm surges function in different shaped bays and different amounts of estuary around them. So some of the bottom line things about working beyond boundaries, being able to just cross back and forth. So working on integration whenever possible. This just happens to be from the Aspen Nicholas Water Forum, but it's something that I wholeheartedly believe, and I'm sure a lot of, or all of you would. So the sanctuary can be a place for kind of quiet contemplation and getting away. It's not very highly visited, which is nice. But key thing is getting the kids out and connecting with nature. I think that's might be the biggest thing that I can do to help make a difference there, is having these guys bond with nature early on in life and be comfortable outside. We do some frozen classroom sessions, and this is with the community school, but we do it with public schools also when the conditions are right for ice fishing, animal tracking, winter ecology, shelter building, all those kinds of things. But just having them comfortable out and exploring is a big part of it. So this is another section kind of from Scott Sampson's book. Perhaps the most potent form of knowledge, the sort most likely to change behavior, arises from the union of knowledge from understanding intellectually, knowing rooted in emotion, and knowing grounded in values and morals. So the three different ways. So you're doing this, blending head and heart, not just intellectual knowledge about what something is. I think is really important. And then this ties into, you might know of Eric Liu from Aspen Institute and Citizen University, who talks about civics as the art of being a pro-social, problem-solving contributor in a self-governing community. And that's what I think of the sanctuary and the university here and others would be focused on. And it's just a matter of making things happen and creating opportunities and to get people involved. What do you want to change in your community? And starting from the bottom, if it's not used, then people on top somewhere with some kind of vested interest they'll drive the system. But we have the capability of doing that. And there are some impediments to cooperation sometimes when you've got lots of different organizations and you have to have competitive grants, or you have branding things that you want to say, we're special because of this, and your identity and things. But think a lot of the best functioning organizations, and I know this center does here too, a lot of it is about collaborating and finding appropriate partners. So that's the end of it. You can go back to anything else you want, and but glad to answer any questions or comments or talk to you about things. Questions, observations? Yeah.
Has there been any attempt or work to try to remove the dams?
Not very much in Somesville there are in other locations, but because of the historic nature of the town, it's unlikely that those would go away. It would be easier in a lot of ways if they would. But because the way town built up around those things, where the buildings are and the streets and other things, is unlikely. So we're probably gonna have to keep working on fixing up those fish passageways. Yeah, but there are efforts, and the Downing Salmon Federation is involved with a lot of that, which I'm sure a lot of you know about, taking dams out or finding better ways to get from the ocean to inland waters. Yeah.
I wonder if you could talk about how you build sort of durable ties between these organizations, because that's an astounding amount of things that you're involved with. Like, I can't believe it. And it just seems like you're talking about, things changing. How do you, beyond just connecting to one person who also really cares, how do you make a system that can kind of self-sustain?
Yeah, fundamentally it has to do with having those connections and relationships. And I've lived on the island since 2002 and started making those connections right away. And so those have gone with me from different jobs that I've done in different places, and I've taken those with me. But knowing what's going on with different projects and ways that you could help or connect someone in another organization or agency with someone else, so kind of like matchmaking in some ways, but also like if I don't make it back there today on the highway or something, like who would carry on? I think having volunteers and board members and others who know what the projects are and having them involved, and a lot of it's with teachers and schools, and the curriculum coordinator for the school district. They know what's going on, so they might not know about all the different things that I do or the sanctuary does, but they'll know different pieces of it, and hopefully that would then be able to sustain like primarily one person operation. But I'm able to reach beyond just Somes Pond by doing all these things with others, and MDI Biolab, where Bridie McGreevy was there for quite a long time, involved with the Frenchman Bay Partners. There's a lot of different partner groups and opportunities to come together to talk about different things. Ecology Atlantic is another big hub, of course, on the island, as is the park. There's all kinds of continuing education kind of ways to learn about projects and research that's going on. So keeping involved with that, you can tie to different people that are doing things. And I forget how it was just an email maybe that wrote to me about learning about this, and so it's just, some of it's just fortuitous, but some of it is, certainly intentional to go out and try to be helpful and make a difference. And my two main strands in my background are education and wildlife research things. So this job enables me to do both of those, and they reinforce one another well. And for example, helping teach elementary school teachers who may not have a science background, helping them with their curriculum planning, not having like a canned program, just bringing in loon stuff and talking about that, but seeing what they need to do for their standards and their lesson plans, and doing it in ways that can get kids outside when possible, doing it differently because I've done it a long time, and just modeling getting kids outside and exploring. A lot of times there's hesitation, like I don't know enough to go out there with them. I can't answer everything, and that's not the main point. It's going out and just exploring it and letting them use their curiosity, because oftentimes that gets beaten out of students by doing kind of wrote things inside. So helping students develop their own interests and have options for what they want to explore is important. I want to ask you guys about younger folks of when you were growing up, and this might be a biased sample because you're in this school here, but how much time did you spend, or what connected you to the outdoors and the environment when you were 5, 6, 7, however old? Would someone share something that connected you? Yeah.
Well, my father and my mother believed in having us outdoors, so we were thrown outside and locked the door locked behind us. So we had to make our own fun, of course. But
Good.
And that, of course, when I was out there alone in the forest in a local area, you kind of fall in love with the surroundings that you have around you. And eventually, as I started to come out of just an imaginary state, I had questions of the world around me that I spent so much time in.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know why the trees were green, or just had these questions that, in my elementary and even in probably around 3rd grade, I didn't have anybody answering until I finally started reaching some scientific courses.
But you had that connection already from your exploration when you were younger. Yeah.
We probably didn't get any. There was no other distractions in the household until probably around 13, until they got like our first game system or something like that. Otherwise, we were outside. My neighbors had like a Game Boy that got in, and I was like, "Why don't I get one of those?" You're like, "Rock your brain, get outside, don't come in."
Good for your parents. One of the things, so Scott Sampson talks about, he references some different studies about the average American child these days. Some studies saying they only have like 7 to 8 minutes of outdoor time per day, or some might be like 30 minutes. I think it was per day. It might have been less than that, which is a really scary thing. And now there's so many other distractions with technology, but I think that's a key thing. And that's not the intellectual part, but that more emotional part of connecting to a place that doesn't have to do with intellect so much as just feeling like that's your own little space. It could be in your backyard, or I remember building forts with neighborhood friends and family, and just being outside exploring and playing. And then the questions come later. Does someone else have a story when they were younger?
I grew up on a farm, so I was
Okay.
outside working most of the time.
Okay.
Taking care of horses. We're mostly a crop farm, so learning how to work with plants and potatoes and vegetables. I've been riding 4-wheelers since I was before I could walk, mostly.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always had a connection to the woods and to the land. I would spend, like you, a ton of time outside. I didn't have like a cell phone until I was like 13 or 14.
Mm-hmm.
I hardly ever use it still. I try to be outside as much as possible.
Do all of you know of nieces and nephews, brothers and sisters who don't get out that much now?
Yeah.
That would be representative of what Scott Sampson's talking about? That just are inside like all the time?
You walk around and you see babies have an iPad in front of them because it keeps them quiet. So they're never going to have the opportunity to be out there on heads.
Mm. Other comments, questions? Glad to talk to people afterwards.
Anybody wants to come up
to-
at the end?
Too.
Sure. Well, let's thank Billy again for